Hi, red.olaughlin here. Welcome to another episode of The Wise Ones. And as I say here on USA Global TV and Radio Network, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, because this is truly a worldwide audience. Today, I am truly honored. I have another good friend of mine on today, Greg Hess. Greg has been in leadership, in management, in marketing, and information technology. I mean, it's very little aspects of business that he has not been in. With that being said, I'm going to ask Coach Greg Hess to join us here on the screen. And Coach, one of the things that I noticed that when I was going back looking at stuff, what have you done that I don't know about? Well, it turns out you and I both worked at Halliburton.
Right.
You were there a little bit after I was there. I was retired by the time that you came on board. But I also noticed that you do, I don't know if you still do or not, the MS 150 ride for multiple sclerosis. Do you still do that?
No, I'm not. I've been off the saddle for a few years now, but I did about 14 of those in a row at one point. Raised lots of funds, and it was always good to, this time of year you'd start training pretty hard, and get to the point where if you could do 100 miles in a week and keep that consistent from now into April, you'd be okay. It was pretty much a parade. Nobody was racing. And if the winds were blowing the right way, it was a beautiful ride, every time.
For those who are not familiar with it, why don't you just give us a real brief overview of what is involved in the MS 150?
Sure. The MS 150 is money to be raised for multiple sclerosis, of course. BP here in Houston has been one of the major sponsors of it for years. The MS 150, we call it, is actually about 180 miles, not kilometers, but miles, and goes from Houston, Texas to Austin. And that route's been changed recently, but that was the route that I rode on year over year. And we'd raise money. I raised well over, $50,000 in my riding, and it's great to give it back, to the community and certainly to taking on the challenges that MS brings to so many people. So it's a fantastic cause and a great way to put your efforts out there and make a difference.
Yeah, my son was in the military, and he was over in the pond there in the Red Sea area, Gulf or whatever. Anyway, his wife came down with MS, and so he ended up getting out of the service to take care of her. So I'm familiar with it from a personal perspective in our family. She's doing very well right now with regard to the medication she has. In fact, she's even thinking about doing some walking on the Appalachian Trail if she feels that good about things. But anyway, just before we get started backstage, I was telling you how happy I was that I was getting ready to pay my sales tax today. And you said, how can anybody be happy about paying sales tax? And the thing that I look at it, if I'm not having any sales, I'm an unhappy camper. I do not like what's going on. I have to have sales. And if I have sales, I pay taxes. I mean, I've been in some rooms that says, how many people here like to pay tax? And of course, nobody. And how many want to pay more tax? Well, they're trying to get into a system where their system will allow you to pay less. But I always raise my hand and say, hey, if I'm making more money, I'll pay more tax. But the business that you're in is one by which me and dozens, hundreds of other people can learn to pay more taxes, both from income tax and from sales tax. So why don't we get a little bit about your background? I knew you grew up in Canada, up in the Calgary area, and then you kind of went in a bunch of different directions. So why don't you take 2 or 3 minutes, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into Texas and how you got into Action Coach.
Sure. I'll be glad to fill you in on all that. I'll give you certainly a Cole's version, but I was fortunate enough to play college basketball and graduated in about 1978 from the University of Calgary and became a head coach at a high school instantly and continued to coach at the high school and college level for 14 years, taking advantage of when I was doing my coaching at the college level. I was an assistant coach at California Lutheran University. I completed an MBA in about 18 months while I was doing the coaching, which worked out really well. Completing that, I went into business and spent, about 30 years in business where I was always called coach, and ended up going back to Calgary along the way, from going from Southern California back to Calgary, opportunity to grow some businesses there, and took over as president of a company called StrataWeb, and eventually working for a company called Kelman Technologies that got into the geophysical space pretty deep. Ended up coming back down, or that's how I ended up getting to Houston. They relocated me here to kind of open up their office and get it rolling. Ended up spending time with Halliburton, and before that was Sun Microsystem. And how I ended up leading into the kind of the coaching world is while I was at Halliburton, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and here I've been called coach all my life, and all of a sudden I was getting messages from people telling me what a difference I'd made in their lives. And I truly believe that the big guy upstairs saved me to carry that mission on. And so that is why I went out and found Action Coach and bought into that franchise. And I've been running that for about 5 years now. And the mission is certainly time is way more important than money. You want to give back, and that's the game that I get to play. And it's a fantastic place to be. That's how I've ended up in the coaching arena.
But you've been in executive positions. You've been in marketing. You understand the need for customers, the need for brand recognition, the need to continue your change as the environment around you changes. How did you do it? How did you gain this expertise?
Well, I think it's fun to be older and have a lot of experience, amongst amongst other business coaches, I suppose, and realizing that there's people that are taking on the business or the idea of a business coach and really don't have the experience, but they have other things to add and value to add. For myself and the experience I've gained, I mean, from a classroom teacher, there's a lot of things you learn there in terms of being in front of a crowd, presenting, organizing, planning, certainly getting people to grow, or helping and guiding them, I should say. It's not so much getting, it's guiding people to grow in a way. I mean, even in the business coaching world today, I'd like to focus more on the person rather than the problem. There's a lot of problems out there, but we can solve those problems, if we dig in deep to who we are and how we're going to take them on. And so I think learning skills like that, as a competitive, very highly competitive athlete for years and so on, you kind of learn how to stand up on your own there and take it in the jaw maybe and go forward. And I think that motivation is infectious. That attitude is infectious. And it's not the idea of being overly competitive with everybody. It's about what is your potential. I have to say, my learning curve took an extremely sharp bend upward in the hockey stick arena style when I was 62 and went through this pancreatic situation. I traced back to, why I have that experience and so on. And I really started to think about what is it that drives Coach S? Why have you been like you've been all your life, and what goes on? And it came down to me going right back to, I'm going to say 60 years ago when I was in a gym at 8 years old and had a basketball in the middle of the floor, and I had people running the lanes, and I made a fake and I dished the ball off to somebody else and they scored. And that was like a thrill. That was the happiness that brought me forward. And I look back and everything I've done in my life, I played plenty of big time games where I scored the final basket and it felt great, but I always felt better when somebody else did it off of what I did by giving the assist. So I just realized that that's what I'm about, and that's my why, and that's why I'm doing this coaching, and that's what I live for every day, and helping people. And I think that message is kind of crazy that I didn't have that understanding of that, even though it was in my head until I was 63 years old. Come on, man. Got to get a hold of it earlier than that, you'd think. But anyway, that's where my journey has brought me the experiences, I think, to help people maybe find their why and get their lives and their businesses running at the potential they can be.
So I should call you Mr. Assist or Coach Assist?
Coach Assist. Bring on the assist.
But in the big scheme of things, from a business perspective, an entrepreneur like myself, and we have many of them out there. In fact, you and I used to meet quite often, almost every week, it seemed like, at local in-person networking events in the Houston area prior to the pandemic. And when you give somebody an assist and they score, that's money in their pocket, as if they were, it's just like giving somebody a referral. I was on a networking event yesterday, got 2 referrals. I mean, had I not been there, I wouldn't have got it. But somebody said, hey, you really need to talk to these people. But it's not just the fact that you get a referral, it's the fact that that referral turns into something tangible, that you're helping that person achieve part of their why, as you are referring to it. And I don't know that many of us really and truly know our whys. You said you were in your 60s, and all of a sudden, I guess you had time with the pancreatic cancer to think about other things that would normally take up your day. And oh, by the way, yeah, that probably, yeah. And so I can see that going around in the head, because I lost a brother-in-law to pancreatic cancer last year. So I'm a little familiar with that. I have another relative with pancreatic cancer right now. It is what it is. It's out there, and some people survive it and some people don't. But regardless, I'm super happy, really and truly am, that you managed to break through that one. That's a tough nut. That one really is.
Yeah, beat me up a little bit.
So if I'm sitting here as an entrepreneur, and I know a little bit about my skill set because I've done this particular job, but maybe I don't know marketing, or maybe I don't know advertising, or maybe I don't know customer satisfaction or whatever. How do you assess what people are really skilled at and where they really need the help?
Boy, isn't that a great question, Red? Yeah, because every client that I work with, all has a different story, a different kind of goals and destinations. I think at the bottom line, I'd like to say that I start with kind of understanding the mastery and making sure that we have mastery in place for what their business is and what they want to do. And there's 4 areas there that I go into, or we like to look at. First one is destination. Where are you going to end up? Where's it going? What are your goals? What are your daily, weekly, monthly, kind of how do you set it up to become, where you want to get in your destination? The second area, it's as simple as time. What are you going to do with your time? How are you going to organize your time? How much time are you going to put into building up this business? And the third one is money. You got to have mastery of money. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And so that is a critical piece, I think, for every business owner to absolutely have very, very, very good understanding of. And I can say a lot more about the types of cash and a whole bunch and go on in that area. But the big thing that I found in growing businesses that I've been working with over the last 5 years and have some phenomenal stories in terms of tracking their numbers and looking at it and putting in 4 different areas, paying attention to 4 types of cash. One of them being, of course, the easy one, the revenue, that's your ego line. Second one, a different type of cash is after you take all those expenses out, what's your profit line? If you don't have a business profitable, you may have to question why you're in business. The third one, and the most important one that I find people are not following or paying enough attention to, and that is cash flow. Looking at a budget you're going to work against for the next 12 or 24 months and putting in your actuals against that profit line and so on, just your P&L, putting in those actuals each month and tracking that. Once you do that 3, 4, 5 months in a row, you see some patterns. You know where money's going and shouldn't be going, in both directions. And the fourth one, in terms of mastery of money and mastery of cash, because cash is king, is equity. What is the value of what you're building in your company? Most business owners typically, are not getting enough out of the business, and how do they grow that? And that comes down to working on your business rather than in your business. And I think most people know that story. But when I try to tell people about it, I go, well, think about investing 2 hours on the CRM today. And in 5 years from now, when we want to sell your business, what's that going to be worth to you? And you think your return on your investment is huge when you're talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for 2 hours. And so that's the 4 types of cash. And the fourth type of mastery is delivery. What type of delivery are you going to have? What's your product, how it's going to be delivered, how it's going to show up on the shelf, how it's going to show up as a service, whatever it might be, and mastering that around consistency associated to the delivery. Find that very, very important to just building the foundation of kind of getting yourself set up to run a business. Those 4 areas of mastery, I think, are key.
the one area that I see that's probably a problem, and I'm judging it for myself, is cash flow, because you don't always have consistent cash coming in the door,
Mhm.
and that disrupts things that are there. You're not necessarily borrowing from Peter, but you're borrowing from a savings, or you're taking it from another source that I intend to pay this thing back down the road. Yeah, I get my income tax return back in. Everything's going to be happy, whatever it may happen to be. But cash flow is a tough one for most of us because that cash isn't flowing the way we want. Saying that if we have a good understanding of our product, our service, our delivery system, and the uh, the the things that generate profit. So,
I was going to say marketing.
yeah, the things that generate the profit where you actually have money coming in the door.
Mhm.
So you have customers, obviously, you buy something, repeat customers, the word of mouth. Uh, how far do you actually get involved in looking at the customer base of a business? I mean, you kind of
Oh,
nailed it down there really nicely with the numbers, but
right.
when you get into the kind of not so easy to find numbers, how do you
Yeah,
massage that?
lots of examples of that. As a business coach, I mean, there's three basic programs I provide, and it's one-on-one coaching, it's empower your team, and it's called Growth Club. Growth Club's a planning cycle for every 90 days, every quarter. All my clients and other people from the public are invited to be a part of that Growth Club. And we plan out our next 90 days right down to the calendar level. I've got a nice framework built for people to work through that and share their ideas and grow together. So those are the three areas, that I focus on in the coaching. And Red, you're gonna have to refresh me on the question. I got a little carried away with my own program there.
How do you assess the customer base as well as, are they a one-time
Right.
customer buyer, multiple referrals? Uh,
Yeah,
that's really your lifeblood as far as being able to stay in business.
absolutely. And so around the marketing, the whole idea of the marketing and strategy, I look at five areas inside of how we're getting business and what that looks like. And we try to segment those. So for example, if you have BNI, if you have, you might call Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, different areas where you're actually marketing to, you want to identify within each of those areas how many leads you're getting, number one variable, very important. And then what's your conversion rate? So if you measure one against the other, I mean, a little bit of test and measuring, and in no time at all, you figure out it's best for me to put these arrows into this area. We were talking about getting the revenue line up. Well, what you do in marketing should have a direct effect on what you get in revenue. The first two, again, as like I said, was number of leads and conversion rate. The third one is repeat business. A lot of that you can think about as referral and so on, but that's a very important part of your business to build, and you want to keep track of that. The fourth one is average dollar sale. What is the average dollar sale that we have for each transaction from each specific marketing strategy that we're running? Because some may be better than others, and maybe even we're advertising in one area versus another, Facebook ads versus Google ads or something like that, and you want to compare the two. It'd be nice to know exactly what your average dollar sale is associated to. Gives you a better chance. And then the fifth variable there is margin. So if you think about taking number of leads times conversion rate, that's going to give you your number of customers. Taking number of customers times a repeat business times average dollar sale, that will give you your revenue. All right. Once you've got your revenue, you got to take out your margin, and pretty well we know what that is. You take your margin out, and that gives you your bottom line profit in that particular strategy. Now, what we do each quarter is we're measuring these 5 ways I just referred to against each strategy. And as we go from quarter to quarter, what we're trying to do is figure out how to get at least 10% better in all 5 of those categories. 10% more leads, 10% better conversion rate, and so on. By doing that, what we put at the bottom line, because the compound formula is a 64% growth formula, right? And that's huge. If you can go 64% growth over 4 quarters in a row, which I have some clients who have been doing that, and it's just phenomenal, the growth. It's exciting. And that's how I do the test and measuring, I guess, or try to guide the test and measuring when I work with clients to let them find the freedom of getting more money in the door and better choices.
One of the things I noticed when I was doing my research on you, it seems like more than once I see the phrase pop up, slogan, the numbers don't lie. And when you're talking about you're tracking this, you're tracking that, you're tracking this, and you're looking for 10%, or how can you get an additional 10%, you're looking at the numbers. We're not talking statistics that can lie. We're talking cold, hard numbers of what's coming into the bank, what's going out of the bank. And so the numbers that what are the most important numbers for a new business to really and truly concentrate? Somebody who's been in business less than 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to make sure that you have your revenues figured out, right? You got to bring in the top line, otherwise you've got nothing. And it's as simple as I say, tracking your P&L, recognize what expenses you have. Now you can play all kinds of games, in terms of getting credit and extending out money and doing different things like that, taking loans from the SBA. I like to coach towards probably a much more conservative strategy than some people will take. I don't think it necessarily takes debt to grow a business. It may take a little, and you may have to have a line of credit for a certain amount of time in order to get yourself on the top side. But measuring exactly what's coming in the door to the revenue, taking out your expenses, looking at your profit line. If you're not profitable, what do you have to change, and move quick, because you have to be dynamic. And you can't run a business for very long if it's not showing profit. You're wasting your time. So you have to figure that out. And sometimes it takes hiring a business coach to get that figured out, I guess.
The pandemic, what did that do to your client base and the business overall in general with your
Yeah.
approach?
And pandemic proved to be very successful for my business. And the reason that happened is that I was maybe a year or so into coaching, year and a half into it. And I visited physically 10 or 12 BNIs. And because I was thinking about joining a BNI, but I wanted to, take advantage of kind of the way they let you visit all the different places. So it seemed like logical to go around and meet as many people as I could and tell them a little bit of, give them a little bit of love from the desk of Coach Hess. And so as I went to each one of those places, I guess, boom, all of a sudden we get hit with the pandemic, and I still am on their list. And I'm coming back, and I'm already a Zoom expert. I've been using Zoom for a long time before that. And I just, it's the old service before self approach. I mean, I'm here to help you. How can I help you? And a lot of people needed help in being able to even host a Zoom session, or certainly how to make them interact, even the other pieces. And from there, several people came and said, hey, you got this figured out. What else you got going? And I started to be able to help them in other areas of their business, growing their marketing, back to understanding their numbers, of course. But, building their team. I mean, I spent a lot of time with my background in coaching, basketball teams, and then also being in business and managing many, many different groups of people. I really enjoy this Empower Your Team program that I bring to people. And we're able to really explode, I guess, the team in one sense, and then on the second sense, the customer relation side of that, because you learn how to communicate with differing people and differing styles. And guess what? The golden rule is okay, doing to others as you do unto yourself, or you'd like to be done to yourself. But the platinum rule, as we've heard, is much, much better, and that is doing to others as they'd like to be treated by you, because they're not you. And the fact that they're not you means that you should probably work pretty hard in a sales situation to understand who they are and what it means to them. And I think the overall skill that's developed when you start to think that way is that you learn how to listen. And when you listen to what other people are saying, when you listen to what other people are saying, the dynamics of the relationship change immensely. And that's how I think sales becomes much more successful, through using something like my Empower Your Team program, and helping people just communicate better. There's all kinds of examples in that world that are fun to talk about.
I know one of my weaknesses is marketing. It's just I know the front end of the business. I can get into everything, but the marketing is one of those things never really and truly been exposed other than life experiences. I'm going through a little bit of the background on you, and I know what lead generation is. That's a pretty easy one. We're networking. We're trying to find, potential fits for our service or product. But there was a term there that I wasn't familiar with, and I want to ask you about it, and that's demand generation. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think cold call marketing, that kind of approach, probably pretty difficult, depending on what you're peddling. Um, Getting into the demand marketing and turning the whole game around is about getting your brand being solid and being consistent. I think consistently providing value to people, and oftentimes the demand value is a lot of you have to give some stuff away. You have to show that you're out there ready to help people and really show what you can do. And I think that creates demand, of course, because people think, oh man, this guy cares about me. And I think caring is the thing that people get from when they want to really work with you and they're demanding. You got to show up. You got to be present. You're not going to get any marketing done unless you're there in some way or in their mind. And I think, again, back to consistency, you need to be consistent. You need to consistently, and find the right targets. When we start to look at what are the right targets, one of the exercises I'll put business through is saying, okay, let's identify our client base for the last period of time, say 6 months, who bought product from us in the last 6 months. Now let's grade them A, B, C, D. And simply by grading them, that's one thing, but why would we pick one an A versus a B? That's what matters, because we want to learn what the attributes are of those A and B clients and turn our demand marketing ideas into getting those type of people. And so the same type of attributes that are associated with the A and B client, which leads to the referral base and the word of mouth marketing that I think is probably more successful than any other type of marketing. Not to say we don't have to be positioned in social media, and Facebook and have your website, all that. You have to have that. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not sure depending on the type of product, whether you're going to get your best sales value out of that all the time. I found in the service industry and coaching, people really want to know you as a person, and that's rightfully so, because the value and the importance of a coach in your life is critical, and you don't want to be making quick decisions on that. You want to make sure that it's right for you, and that's part of being a coach and helping people make that decision.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarity on that one, because I understand it a little bit better. You started out by saying cold calling, and I remember driving down to Corpus Christi. I'm listening to some TED Talks on my phone, and this guy was on there and said he had to make several dozen cold calls a day. I was just every single day. It didn't make any difference. And between him and another guy, they were always either number one, number two. And he started, okay, today he's Cary Grant. Tomorrow he's John Wayne. And he started doing that. He did them very, very well. And then he said, okay, well, let me try with a French accent, a Russian accent, a German accent, a British accent. And he found out, in the big scheme of things, for him and his approach, a British accent got him higher number of conversions on those cold calls. And I'm thinking to myself, I catch something on a cold call and it's usually a computer talking to me, of which I go click. But sometimes you get, oh, that's kind of an interesting accent, and you listen a little bit more because it's different. I mean, they're selling you, they're selling you, or they will be shortly. But sometimes you get those little things in there that's just not the norm, that we're not expecting it. And I just wanted to kind of bring that out, because sometimes just you offset just a slight little bit makes a difference. But you mentioned showing up. Okay, showing up, there's so many ways to do that. Prior to COVID, we showed up all over the place. I mean, it didn't matter if I had to drive an hour somewhere here in Houston. It was just, that was part of doing business. Right. COVID came, and all of a sudden we gave up on cars and we went to Zoom. And now, where I used to have 20, 30, 40 people at a networking event, I can't even get 6. It's crazy. Right. But how do I know I'm showing up to my demographic when I'm using social media? How do you advise a client on which social media to use and how to effectively use it?
Right. Well, back to the 5 ways discussion we had earlier as to conversion or leads, where do leads come from? It's absolutely critical that every business, when you get a lead, you ask, where did you find us? because that's probably as close to the absolute truth you'll get as to where they came from. It's hard to track leads, especially in the social media side. But you can look at all your impressions and all these other things where people touched and so on. And there are techniques where you make, have dialing numbers directly into your website or off your My Google page that you can tell came directly from there, and you can identify that. All of my clients definitely, as soon as they have a lead, they have identified where they came from. And I think that's critical, is knowing where they came from. But that's kind of the moment of truth. Is your social media working in terms of getting exposure? Yeah, you can see those kind of things just by looking at your analytics come out of either Facebook, LinkedIn, and also Google. You get a pretty good idea of that. But the whole SEO game is still a bit of a mystery at times for many people, even in the marketing. I've been studying it, through the companies I work with, and I see that some have some really nice software to show what your ranking is in your area, at a certain time or snapshot, and when people do lookups and so on, which we know that's what SEO is all about, especially on the Google page. But it comes down to paying attention to the numbers and the reports that you get. And I think there's a gut feel you got to have as a business owner about where you're getting your business from. And when I sit down and have coaching sessions with my business owners, I'm saying, okay, where's this business coming from? They're going to know without even looking oftentimes at the stats that we've gathered. They're paying that close attention. It depends on the volume, the type of business they have. But a plumber, an electrician, they kind of know where the connections have always come from.
Let's go down the brand pathway for just a brief moment or two toward the end of the show here. Brand marketing. I had a major dilemma with myself. Do I market my company, MRO Global LLC, which nobody understands what that is, or do I market myself as my name, red.olaughlin? And so I went with the red.olaughlin because that's everybody knows me as that. But I'm sure you've probably had customers, clients, businesses that their brand needed to be changed. And sometimes that's like telling, well, your baby's ugly.
Right.
That's very personal. How do you go about assessing a brand? And then if it needs to change, how tactfully do you do it?
Well, there's a variety of cases I've come across, right, where that's kind of been something to talk about very early when they're just starting up their business, because in the end, if you're tied to a specific, unless your brand gets so big, I guess in the end, what I mean by the end is that you got an exit strategy and you're going to sell your business. And if it's tied to your name, it just may take a little bit away from the value of the business, right? Having a more general name. So that's one thing to think about, when you're branding. I think branding as a whole, again, is back to consistency, and consistency to the point that they know enough about your brand that it becomes synonymous with your culture. And they know your culture. They know what your business is about. They know what you stand for. One of my plumbers that I work with, he set a basic, unique value promise to his clients that every time he comes to work in your house as a plumber, he's going to leave it cleaner than when he got there. Guaranteed, right? And that's his unique selling proposition, unique value promise. And good golly, that's a brand. Believe it or not, that's part of the brand of his company. And it's taking it all the way down to the value string, the value chain of what you do and what you represent. And therefore, the brand becomes all of that. I mean, you think of Coca-Cola, you don't just think of Coca-Cola. You think of all the different things that are, the different ads. You might think the one world thing that they were playing with and all that before. So I think that's important when you build a brand, that you build it consistently and you have a culture around it, meaning your mission and your, where you're going with this brand. And it becomes bigger than the company, bigger than you, bigger than, than everything. As a brand. The company has to be bigger than you. I didn't mean to misword that. That's all part of building rituals into companies and everything else that goes with it as far as gaining ground in the brand strategy. As simple as a basketball coach, what will we do in order to push our brand and push our business and make it feel like the brand was bigger than us? after a timeout, we all get her going, and we're going to break back out to the floor. Everybody puts their hand in the middle, and we do something like yell defense or Chiefs or whatever the name of our team is. And that's an example of branding, I think. And that's kind of the way you want to think about your business, is when people come together, they know this is what you guys represent. This is what that brand is. And the more you can build into that, into those emotional feelings connected to it, the more powerful your brand and your marketing and everything else will be.
Okay, before I give you a chance to talk about what we didn't talk about, you, like me, have met many, many people, and sometimes at a networking event, they have a chance to give their 30-second, minute, 2-minute elevator pitch. And one-on-one, they're great. They are absolutely wonderful. You'd want to know more about them, but they get up there in front of everyone and they can't speak in front of people for whatever reason. And I'm sure you've run into that. This is a skill set that if you're going to be in front of people and you got to show up, you have to have that message. Yeah. How do you help somebody who has a public speaking problem?
Yeah, well, there's certainly the mindset, right, in the practice. And believe it or not, I had one person come to me that way, and what it was about for him was I took him right to affirmations and started telling him, hey, you are a great speaker. Start telling yourself you're becoming a great speaker. You're going to be a great speaker. Repeat that. I mean, as simple as it is, get his mindset around that. One example. But in terms of getting people in front of a networking group and so on, I think it's a matter of understanding what themes you want to get across. 30-second talk. All right. I'll coach people. Number one, identify a problem. Some problem that's associated to your business. In my coaching world, it could be, many people don't understand their target market, right? That might be a problem. There's challenges in understanding where you're talking, some kind of problem, wherever it might be. Chiropractor, a lot of people are living in pain, right? And so once you've defined the problem, the second thing you want to do is give your solution, right? So here's the problem. Here's what we can do about it. And then the third thing is just turn it into happiness. Now, get that written out, kind of practice that, but get it so you understand step 1, step 2, step 3, then forget about it and just do it. And I think that that's the way I've coached some people on it. And they learn to expand that 30 seconds real quickly into a minute, into 2, into 3, whatever they need to for the type of presentation they do. But it's as simple as define a problem, give a solution, and make them happy. Give them happiness in the end, which is usually your solution created that happiness. The right way to put it, of course.
Coach, is there something you wanted to bring up today that I did not cover that you can bring in now?
I've been absolutely thrilled to just be here and share some of these ideas and thoughts. You inspired me many, many moons ago, to get into the book writing thing and so on. And I took a lot of your advice and I built some things, and I'm on a mission now of moving down that path in a much better way. And I will make put the stake in the ground that we'll have a book out before the end of this year. And it looks like it's going to be peak experiences, building character through challenges and mindset is what I've got in mind for a title now. But I'm early and more to come, and we'll be talking about that. But I wanted to thank you for inspiring me to think, and it took me a little while to get myself rolling, but I'm going there.
Oh, great. Thank you so very much. I feel honored. Who is a good client for you, and what is the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah. People that are interested in certainly growing their business, but as far as being a client with me and becoming a client with me, I really think it takes some time to just talk with me about your business, get familiar, do a little bit of I offer a business strategy session that will design what does it look like over 3 years, and what does it take to put the framework in place relative to where you are today and where you'd like to be. From there, that's the key thing. And you can get a hold of me through my email, my website, greghess.actioncoach.com. My email is greghess@actioncoach.com. And then, I also have YouTube channels out there, and you can find me on Facebook and everywhere else. Best type of clients are those that are energized to kind of go, I've been here. I could use a little pat on the back from somebody else. And I guess I talk I've had clients for 3 and 4 years, and I wonder sometimes, I truly ask them, what's the reasoning, and they said, it's the only time of an hour every 2 weeks where I totally focus on my business. He said, the rest of the time I'm not finding, especially the lawyers, they just don't have the time. And so I find that that's very rewarding, to be able to be on, and I'm honored to have those kind of clients. But it's those type of clients that need to have an outside perspective, somebody from outside the picture frame that they're in, to grow that. And as simple as my program is, I guarantee whatever people pay me in 3 months to have that back in their bottom line and working with me, or I coach for free. It's that simple.
Okay, for our audio audience out there, Greg Hess, Greg Hess, HESS .actioncoach.com, or Greg Hess, GREGHESS @actioncoach.com for an email. And on LinkedIn, you go by Coach Hess, right?
Right. That's my call.
Okay, fantastic. Coach Hess, thank you so very much for joining us today. I really and truly appreciate, because I just made you this offer a couple weeks ago, and you said, "Whoop, I'm there." And that I do appreciate. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Red. I appreciate being part of such a large global audience. It's just a thrill to be included.
Wow. And we will be talking later. Very shortly, let's see here, 18 minutes from now, on the hour, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I'll be concluding, I think it's either number 5 or number 6 in a series on the journey to optimal health in 2024. We've talked about mindset. We talked about how do we begin to make change, effective change. We've gotten into what are those things that are really important in order to make a change in your health. And last week, we talked a little bit about stress management. And then we got into where the bottom line is at in your gut. What do we do as far as the food we put in? So we're going to hopefully finish up, maybe not, but come pretty close, talking about diet and all aspects of that with regard to how do we optimize our health for 2024? So please join me on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And again, thanks to Coach Hess today on the Wise Ones. And I will catch you all next week, and have a wonderful time. Take care, y'all.